So, Christian Mbilli wins a 10-round unanimous decision over Sergiy Derevyanchenko in what was a war. Sergiy Derevyanchenko once again showed absolutely tremendous heart. He gutted it out and managed to go the distance despite tearing his bicep in the second or third round. His left bicep, that is. And it affected him to the point to where he could not even throw any left hooks. He couldn't throw a jab. He couldn't throw a solid jab. He couldn't throw a jab that, he would intend to land. All he could do was basically probe with it while haphazardly extending his arm. He couldn't put any power behind his left hand. He was forced to, in many instances, switch southpaw so that he could at least use his right hand as a range finder and actually stick and move with his right hand. And of course, he was just spamming straight right hands and little right hooks from long distance, trying to chip away at Mbilli and land whatever punches were available to him at his disposal, because his left hand just wasn't working. He was struggling to even lift his left arm up to even block punches, and he was getting hit with right hands all throughout the fight by Mbilli, who was typical Mbilli in this fight. He came into this fight just doing what he typically does. He comes in, closes the distance, is pretty herky-jerky, likes to, step in and out, likes to get underneath your shots, get underneath your guard, and wing away with hooks, body and head. He likes to put together a consistent onslaught and try to chip away at you, wear you down, break you down, and knock you out. But he's not a one-punch knockout artist. And the guys who have been able to catch Derevyanchenko and drop him, which, by the way, he was not one of them, the guys who have been able to catch and drop Derevyanchenko, in general, have been guys who have been able to catch him on the way in at long distance. Christian Mbilli was just coming in from the center of the ring, trying to close distance, and trying to basically accumulate punches and break Derevyanchenko down. But Derevyanchenko is somebody who's known to be stronger as the fight goes on. And to tell you the truth, Derevyanchenko was broken down more physically in this fight than I had ever seen him in previous fights, but he never seemed close to being stopped or even quite put down. In fact, out of the two, Christian Mbilli was the closest to getting put down. In the 7th round, despite the fact that he was injured, he managed to catch Mbilli with a right hook in the center of the ring and almost put him down. Now, how much did that really work in Derevyanchenko's favor? Well, he managed to put together a pretty serious onslaught and hurt Mbilli in the middle of the 7th round. But Mbilli managed to come back and basically beat him down in the rest of the round. And in the 9th and the 10th rounds, he pretty much put together a serious beating on Derevyanchenko. And what I will say about Mbilli is I thought from a cerebral standpoint and from a more pragmatic game plan point of view, he was a bit more measured and composed in this fight than I had ever seen him before. He wasn't quite just winging away. He seemed to put more of a concerted effort into pacing himself. But the problem is, he's not somebody who really uses any rangefinders. He doesn't vary the speed or the power of his shots. Everything he throws, he's going to throw with full intent to knock you out. And that does not bode well for him when it comes to, even if he's pacing himself and not fighting at an intense volume, especially if he's missing shots, the amount of energy he's exerting, contorting his body to try to get power onto those hooks is going to take its toll on him and wear him down as the fight goes on. So noticeably, from the 3rd round onwards, he was starting to fight in spurts considerably more. And Derevyanchenko was able to have his success here and there. But Derevyanchenko, this was his third or fourth fight at 168 pounds since moving up. He doesn't really have a size advantage over anybody in the weight class, and Mbilli is one of the stronger fighters in the weight category. Not in terms of height and reach, but in terms of his pure bulk. He's a very strong, built, muscular type of a guy. He is very physically strong, and Derevyanchenko was never able to physically push him back, intimidate him, nor did his punches really get his respect in general. He was landing some good right hands. He was able to catch Mbilli on the way, and Mbilli isn't the most defensively responsible fighter. He's a relatively basic and crude sort of a slugger, but he is a pretty quick-handed guy, and he is physically strong. So it was going to take much more than Derevyanchenko just fighting his fight. He was going to need to hurt Mbilli in this fight. He was going to need to outland Mbilli, and considering the fact Derevyanchenko prefers to be in the pocket with opponents, he prefers to fight moving laterally or coming forward. Him moving backwards, he was never going to be able to generate the amount of power to get the respect of the judges in rounds where otherwise Mbilli was going to be outworking him and throwing, as many big power shots as he was. He was never going to give Derevyanchenko much of a chance to win the fight on the cards. And with that torn bicep, it took one whole hand basically away from him. So, yeah, Derevyanchenko even tried to switch southpaw. Really, he didn't look particularly natural in doing so, but you can't really blame him. He had to get desperate. But yeah, props to Derevyanchenko on making it the distance. He is a warrior. I think he should probably retire. But when you look at a fighter like Derevyanchenko, with his tenacity in the ring and with his willingness to fight the best and fight pretty much whoever, whenever. I mean, he really didn't have to fight Mbilli. Mbilli isn't really a huge star. He's an unbeaten prospect, basically. He didn't have to fight this fight, but he is a warrior. He will fight anybody, and he's the type of guy who, in my view, gives off the impression of somebody who you need to kill him to get him out of the sport. I just hope he doesn't take too much punishment or suffer too much neurological damage by the time his career is over, because yes, he's only had 21 fights, but he has taken some serious, serious beatings along the way. And I'm not even just talking about his 6 defeats officially. Just look at his victory against Jack Colquet. He took a serious beating in that fight too, and arguably lost. I mean, he has had an extreme, for a guy who's only had 21 fights. Pretty much exactly one third of the fights in his career have been extremely punishing, taxing fights, and all of his defeats, especially, it makes you almost feel bad for him that none of his efforts, especially in close fights, have been rewarded by the judges. But even in those defeats, he really had to work hard to get himself back into the fights, especially as someone who's often had to find himself coming from behind, whether it be due to early knockdowns or whatever the case may be. But yeah, it was an excellent fight. Mbilli does go onwards and upwards from here. I think he can win a world title. I just don't see him being a super dominant champion. I do think he's a pretty basic, I think he's a pretty rudimentary slugger. But he is going to be issues for the top guys. I think if he's to fight a Canelo, he could be issues for him just on his volume, just on his tenacity, his physical strength, and things like that. But I just don't see him having quite the technical edge to be able to get the better of elite guys on a consistent basis. But let me know what you all think about him and his performance. And even Derevyanchenko, what he should do from here. I think he should retire, but I think he'll probably keep going. But let me know what you all think. Have a good one.